Have you ever noticed that the more time you give a task, the longer it takes to finish? And yet, when time is almost gone, you suddenly become faster than you ever imagined. This is not a story about time. It is a story about ending. In a quiet town, near the edge of an old street, lived a man named Edward. Edward restored antique clocks for a living. His workshop smelled of aged wood, old metal, and the rich aroma of warm coffee. At the center of the room, a small fireplace always glowed, a constant companion that never went out. Edward held a deep belief, one he lived by every single day. Good work needs time, and time should never be rushed. He treated each clock not as an object, but as a life waiting to be rekindled. His hands, though calloused, moved with a delicate grace. Each turn of a screw, each polish of a gear, a testament to his philosophy. He believed that the soul of his work was woven into the unhurried moments he spent with it, that true craftsmanship couldn't be bound by a deadline. His reputation was built on this patience, this unwavering commitment to letting time do its work. One crisp winter morning, a knock at the door brought an important request. The town council had come to him. They asked if he would restore the grand clock for the new town hall's opening ceremony. It was an honor, a project that would stand as the centerpiece of the town's future. Edward listened, a gentle smile forming on his lips. He ran a hand over the rough plans they showed him, his eyes already seeing the gleaming brass and hearing the steady tick-tock. He nodded slowly and said, with the quiet confidence of a master, "I will take my time." I want it to be perfect. For him, perfect was not just about function. It was about capturing a moment, about creating something that would feel as timeless as the hours it was meant to keep. Days turned into weeks. Edward began the restoration with his usual meticulous care. He dismantled the clock, laying out each tiny piece in perfect order. He cleaned the gears with a soft cloth, then, unsatisfied, cleaned them again, holding them up to the light to inspect every surface. He reassembled the intricate mechanism, only to open it once more, convinced a small adjustment could make it better. Every evening, as the light faded, he would pull his chair closer to the fireplace, a cup of coffee warming his hands, and simply watch the flames dance. He would look over at the silent, unfinished clock and whisper to the empty room, "There is still plenty of time." The fire stayed warm and comforting. The clock stayed silent and still. His workshop, once a place of progress, had become a sanctuary of stillness, a bubble where the urgency of the outside world couldn't penetrate. One cold morning, the rhythm of his quiet world was broken by a sharp knock on the door. A messenger stood on his doorstep, his breath turning to mist in the frigid air. "The ceremony," the messenger said, his voice polite but firm, "is in 4 days." Edward simply nodded, his expression calm, as if this news was of no great consequence. He thanked the messenger and closed the door. But as the sound of footsteps faded, something inside him shifted. The calm on his face was a mask for a growing unease. That night, as he sat in his usual spot, he noticed the fire in the hearth burned lower than usual. The flames no longer danced with lively energy. They flickered weakly, casting long, trembling shadows across the room. The warmth felt less comforting, and for the first time, the silence of the unfinished clock seemed to mock him. On the final night, a profound coldness settled over the workshop. Edward awoke to a chilling stillness. The fireplace, his constant source of warmth and light, had gone out completely. The room was dark, silent, and heavy, with an unspoken weight. Edward didn't try to relight it. He simply sat on the cold wooden floor, his back against a workbench, and stared at the dark, looming shape of the unfinished clock. The project he had cherished had become a monument to his inaction. And there, in the absolute quiet, he finally spoke the truth, not to anyone else, but to himself. His voice was a raw whisper in the cold air. "I wasn't protecting the work. I was avoiding the end." In the profound silence that followed his confession, something happened. A sound, so small yet so clear, cut through the stillness. The pendulum, which had been motionless for weeks, moved. One single tick echoed in the cold workshop. In that moment, Edward understood everything. Time does not stretch itself for our benefit. It is we who stretch ourselves inside of it, pulling and distorting it, all because we fear the finality of completion. The endless polishing, the constant adjustments, the mantra of plenty of time. It was never about achieving perfection. Perfection was just the excuse. His real problem was a deep-seated fear of finishing, a fear of letting go, of seeing his work leave his hands and exist in the world without him. The end meant judgment, it meant it was no longer his. With this new clarity, a surge of purpose moved through him. Edward stood up and relit the fireplace. But this time, it wasn't for warmth or comfort. It was to begin. He worked through the night under the renewed light of the fire, his hands moving with a speed and certainty he hadn't felt in weeks. He fixed the final piece. There were no more second guesses, no more unnecessary changes, no more delays. As the first light of dawn streamed through the workshop window, the great clock began to tick. A steady, strong, rhythmic beat filled the room. It wasn't perfect, not in the way he had once imagined. It had flaws, tiny imperfections that only he would ever know. But it was alive. At the town hall ceremony, as the clock was unveiled, a hush fell over the crowd. People didn't ask how long it took or what methods were used. They simply stopped what they were doing, looked up, and listened to the beautiful, steady ticking that filled the grand hall. That evening, Edward returned to his workshop. He sat by the fireplace, the flames burning brightly, and smiled. He no longer needed extra time. He had found something far more valuable: the courage to finish. Work does not need endless time. It needs a clear ending. Because time expands not to give us more space to create, but only when we are afraid to finish. Thank you for joining me for this story. If it touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content that inspires.